Okay, so this I had mentioned last time also. This is by the fundamental theorem of duality. So there are three main statements which you need to remember, that if one of the problems is primal, sorry, optimal, then the other one is also optimal. So here optimal means that you are to check that there is a finite optimal solution. Okay, and the second point is that if one of them is unbounded, it would imply the other one is infeasible. So again here unbounded would mean that there is an unbounded optimal objective function value. Okay, not just unbounded region. This also means that at optimality or there is no as such finite optimal objective function value. You can make it as small as you want to or as large as you want to. And the third point says that if one of them is infeasible, then the other one could be either infeasible or unbounded. Okay, so these are the main three statements which you have to remember when you are solving one problem using the solution of the other. So if you have to do that, then these are the three main points you need to remember. Now the only problem you would face is in the third point, where you are not sure about the other one. So here if one of them is infeasible, you are not sure whether the other one is infeasible or unbounded. Okay, now for checking unboundedness, or if the problem is unbounded, then it is comparatively easier for us to predict, because this we can always rule out. Infeasibility can be always ruled out by checking at least one feasible solution. So for the other problem, if you are able to give that there is at least one feasible solution, then you would be able to uh, rule out this possibility of being infeasible, and so the only option would be being unbounded. So you can be sure that okay, your other problem is unbounded. But in case you are not able to show some feasible point or there's some problem, then you might have to use some graphical method or something else to predict the final conclusion. So usually you would not have such cases coming up in your questions. Either your other problem would be optimal, or you would have this case when unboundedness implies infeasibility, or you would have the third case when one is infeasible and the other is unbounded. So mostly you will have these cases. The last one, when one is infeasible and the other is also infeasible, for this you will have to use the graphical method. I don't think there is any way out using simplex. Okay, so just using simplex may not tell you what is the conclusion for such cases. Okay, so is this clear till here? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So this one, this maybe you can take a screenshot or note down whatever. Uh, the reading solution technique, how to read the solution of one of the problems from the final tabulae of the other one. Okay. So in case of finite optimal, not in case of unboundedness, and for that we know that the other one is infeasible. So if one is unbounded, so there we don't have to do all this. So here if your first if your problem, the one which you are solving, is a maximization problem, then we all know that stopping criteria is Cj minus Zj less than equal to 0. So I think you all are solving every problem by converting it to max form first. Is that so? Are you all converting every problem to max? Yes, okay. So you will always have this particular case when your Cj minus Zj's are all less than equal to 0. Okay, now in this case, in order to get the value of the dual variables corresponding to the constraints which are inequality constraints. So we know the association is that constraints in one problem correspond to the variables in the other problem. So here if your dual variables correspond to inequality constraints, then inequality constraints would always have a slack or a surplus variable associated. So you are going to check the Cj minus Zj of those slack and surplus, and the value of the dual would be negative of this. Okay, why negative? Because Cj minus Zj is already negative at the stopping iteration. So when you stop at that point, these are all negatives. So you have to take a negative sign for this, so that the other problem, the dual problem, has variables which are non-negative, okay, because inequality constraints would always correspond to non-negative variables in the other problem. So this step you have to remember, that you have to take the negative, okay. And in case you have dual variables corresponding to equality constraints, so that means in case your maximization problem has some equality constraints, so in that case what you will do is, you will take the Cj minus Zj for the corresponding artificial variable, and from that Cj minus Zj you are going to ignore the m term, whatever is left you take the negative of that, okay. So is this step clear? For dual variables corresponding to inequalities, you take negative of Cj minus Zj. For dual variables corresponding to equality constraints, you consider the artificial variables, take their Cj minus Zj, remove the m part, and then take the negative of that, okay. So in both these cases you have to take the negatives. So in max problem, always remember to take the negatives. Now one more thing here, if you have a minimization problem and you are converting it to max, okay, then you will not apply the rules of the minimization problem, because Cj minus Zj is negative for all the j's at optimality, okay. So the rule which I am telling you here for a, sorry, this should be a minimization problem, just a second. This has to be for a minimization problem. Okay. Now for a minimization problem, your stopping criteria is Cj minus Zj greater than equal to 0. So do not confuse these conclusions with a problem which you are solving when you are converting this min to max. Okay, then you don't have to use these rules. Then you will have to use the rules for max only. Okay, so here what you have to do is, your value of dual variables would be given by the value of Cj minus Zj, because Cj minus Zj is all positive, so you directly take those values. And then for the equality constraints, again you take the negative of the Cj minus Zj part after ignoring the m term, okay. So these are the set of rules. Now in case you have converted it to the max form, then all your Cj minus Zj's would be less than equal to 0. So this step remains the same for the minimization problem also. In this step, since you have the negatives of what you get when you solve the minimization directly, okay, so here you don't have to take the negative again, because you already have a negative once when you are solving a min problem in terms of a max problem. Okay, so this thing you have to just tackle this carefully. You can't use the rules for minimization in case you are solving it to after converting it to the max form. Okay, so if you are doing that, then reading this part, you are not going to take the negative, because it is already negative since you have taken it in the max form, okay. So you just have to take only that part of the Cj minus Zj which does not contain m, and directly that is the value of your dual variable, okay. So are these steps clear, or the rules clear to you?
So, for example, if we convert maximization to minimization, in that case also we will not take the negative, right?
Yes, then you don't have to do this thing. Then you don't have to take the negative here also and here also, because you already have all Cj minus Zj's positive in the stopping. So then this step is also the same as the minimization step. You take the values directly, and the second step you don't have to take negative, okay. You take the value as it is. Okay, so basically there what is happening is, instead of Cj minus Zj you are having Zj minus Cj. If you are converting a min to a max problem, instead of having the Cj minus Zj for this min, you are having Zj minus Cj for the corresponding for the minimization problem. Okay, so the signs get reversed, and so you will have to be careful with the negative signs. But always remember that corresponding to inequality constraints, your dual variables are always non-negative. Okay, so you will have to either reverse the sign or take the sign as it is, whatever makes it a positive value, or you may remember that you just have to take the absolute value. Okay, if you remember it like that, then you'll never go wrong, because your dual variables are non-negative. There is only a problem with the sign part when you have dual variables unrestricted. So that would come when your dual variables correspond to equality. So there you have to be careful whether to take the negative sign or the positive sign. Okay, so if you are solving a max, like a max problem, then you just take the negative of that. And similarly, if you are solving a min, like a min problem, then take negative. But if you are reversing the things, then you have to take the opposite signs. Okay, in that case, you don't have to take the negative for that. Okay, so is that somewhat clear now? Yes.
Ma'am, in the min problem, when there is inequality constraint, so we don't take negative of Cj minus Zj, right?
No, if you are solving the min problem like a min problem, not converting it to max, okay, then in the end
Yes.
all your Cj minus Zj's would be positive. So take them as it is for the dual variable. You don't have to reverse sign, okay, for the inequalities, okay, because for your dual problem, all your dual variables would be would be non-negative for these constraints, the inequality constraints. Corresponding to these, all your dual variables would be non-negative. So you, since they are already greater than equal to 0 Cj minus Zj, so no sign change. Okay, okay, is it fine?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So this example, I think, no, I did not take it last time. So if you want, you may note it down. It is a max problem, and we are going to solve this problem and then tell the solution of the dual for this problem. Okay, so we need to write the dual also. So that is the dual. Just check quickly, maybe you can do most of it orally now. Your right hand side is 10, 1 and 14, but since we usually convert that's what I always do, that for a max problem all your constraints should be of the less than equal to type, whatever inequalities you have. So this would convert to minus, this would convert to minus x1 plus x2 less than equal to minus 1. Okay, so in place of this particular constraint, I'll now look at this for converting it to the dual. Okay, so I'll have minus 1 in the objective function here, and this will have 14. Now my first row here 1 1 1 becomes the first column, so 1 1 1. Then the second row minus 1 1, and there is no term of x3, so it is 0. So minus 1 1 and 0, there is no y2 here. Okay, so that 0 comes here, and then the third row 1 3 1 goes in the third column, 1 3 1. So that is my left hand side of the constraint part. All my constraints would be of the type greater than equal to, and this side will contain the coefficients from the objective function. So 4 5 and minus 3, that will come here. Okay, so this is my dual. And regarding the signs of the variables, since first constraint is equality, so first variable here would be unrestricted and the rest of them would be non-negative, because I have converted all constraints here to the less than equal to type. If you don't do this, then you will have to tell that y2 is negative, less than equal to 0. So that also would be a condition here, but then these signs would be different. Okay, so it won't be the same as this. So wherever you have a y2, you will have a reverse sign. Okay, you will have a plus sign here, you will have a plus sign here. So those things will also change, and it will not look like this, although it is the same problem, but there is a slight change in the sign. So that will look a different, like a different problem, but it will not be different, it will be the same. So this is the dual part of it, and in order to solve the primal, if I am solving it using big M method, I need to attach artificial variables with these coefficients. Okay, so my first constraint is only equality, so I'll attach a artificial here. Second one is greater than equal to type, so now I am taking the original one only, which is of the type greater than equal to, so I have to attach a surplus and then correspondingly an artificial. and third one is less than equal to type, so I only need to attach a slack here and make it equality. So this is my final problem which I have to solve. Okay, now the association, if we look, what is the association between the dual and the primal variables, and the constraint part. So since my first constraint here corresponds to the first variable in the dual, so and in this constraint the only variable which I have added is artificial, so the correspondence is between artificial and the y1 first variable. So when I am going to find the values of these variables at optimality, I am going to check Cj minus Zj's for these variables. Okay, so for a1 would correspond to y1. In the second row or in the second constraint, I am attaching a surplus here which is S1. So if I have a slack or surplus, I need not use artificials there. So here my correspondence is S1 corresponds to, yes.
In the second constraint, why did we use a slack as well as an artificial?
We have used a surplus since it is a greater than equal to constraint, so we need to subtract something to make it equal. Okay, and then in order to get identity, we need to attach an artificial. Okay, we won't get 1 0 0 1 0 column, the column of identity. Here you have a minus sign, so that will give you 0 minus 1 0, not 0 1 0. So for that we need to attach an artificial. So along with surplus you always have an artificial. Okay, otherwise you won't get the identity column. And then third constraint corresponds to third variable here. So you are going to use Cj minus Zj of S2 in order to find the value of y3. Okay, so is this association fine? Yes. Okay, so whenever you have slack or surplus, you are going to use them. Only when you have an equality constraint, which means when there is no slack or surplus, then only you have to use the artificial variable, otherwise you don't have to look at it. Okay, so now I'll not solve this, I'm just showing you the final table of this problem, the big M problem which we had, and this is in the fourth iteration. So you'll have to make 4 tables and finally you will reach here. So in this problem, in the end you can see all your Cj minus Zj's are less than equal to 0, and for a min problem, that is your stopping criteria or the optimality criteria. So you stop here, each of these is less than or equal to 0, and there are no artificial variables occurring in the basis. So you say that the problem is feasible and it has a feasible, optimal feasible solution. And the solution is, what is the solution of the primal? Your x1 has value 0, x1 has value 8, x2 has value 2, and x3 is 0. Since x3 does not appear in the basic variables, so x3 is 0. And corresponding to 8 and 2, if you put them in the objective function, 8 is having coefficient 4, x1 is having coefficient 4, so 8 into 4 32, and then x2 is having coefficient 5, and 5 into 2 will give you 10. So the optimal z value is 42. Okay, this is for your big M problem also and for your original problem also, this is the value, because in the final table you can see no artificials are present. So objective function would remain the same for the 2 problems at optimality here. Okay, and if we have to do it for the dual, again you remember the correspondence, y1 corresponds to a1. Now in a1 you have to look at the Cj minus Zj of a1, remove this m term, take this remaining portion and take the negative of that. Okay, since we are solving a max problem, even if you are solving a min problem like a minimization problem, you have to reverse the sign. So here we have a minus 7 by 2, you take plus 7 by 2 after sign reversal, and y2 corresponds to s2, no, just a moment, S1, sorry, y2 corresponds to S1, so Cj minus Zj of S1 is equal to y2, and y3 corresponds to S2, but you are going to take the negative again because it is a max problem and all of them are less than equal to 0. So basically you are going to take the absolute value for this Cj minus Zj. So it will become half, and then you can check from the objective function of your dual problem. Just a moment. If I go back, the objective function for the dual problem 10y1 minus y2 plus 14y3. So if I just put it here, sorry, ten y1 minus y2 plus 14 y3. Okay, so just substitute these values. 10 y1 is 10 into 7 by 2, then y2 is 0, so nothing, and then you have 14 into y3, which is half again. So this would give you 35 plus 7, which is 42. Okay, so you are going to get the same objective function value for the dual as for the primal. So if you have made a correct sign change wherever required, you are going to get the same value. So that will help you in verifying also whether you've done it correctly or not. Okay. So this is how you are going to read in case of optimality, and when you are solving a max problem. You are going to take the negative of Cj minus Zj for inequality constraints and negative of this part after ignoring the m part for the variables which correspond to equality constraints. Okay. So for a max problem you have to take a negative throughout. For a min problem, only negative for corresponding to the equality constraints, not the remaining. Is this clear? Just read it once and see. Yes?
I had a doubt.
Yes?
Like I cannot get the intuition behind the big M method. Like why are we using it, and how do we identify in a question that we have to use the big M method or the two-phase method?
See, two-phase method and big M method, they work in the same manner. Okay. The only difference is that here you are combining the two phases into a single phase. So you are just clubbing them. Okay. So you can say that this is at times it works faster. Now in case of questions which are feasible, uh, two phase big M is always easier to work with, but in case of questions which are not feasible, two phase will give you an answer in faster than big M, that your problem is infeasible. Okay. So let me just complete this part, then maybe I'll come to that, when to take big M, or actually there is no such rule when to use which method, but usually I prefer using big M when you have to just solve the problem. You know the problem has an answer solution, so you directly use big M rather than using two phase, because there is you have to change the objective function after phase 1 gets over, then you have to change it. Okay, so to avoid that, I usually prefer using big M. Yes, Svetlana, you want to ask something?
But
Hmm.
but why are we using them in the first place? Like why can't we simply solve them using the simplex method?
See, simplex is there only for as long as you have slack and surplus. As soon as you have artificial variables, you have to use either big M or two phase. The usual simplex will not help. Okay, because
But we're using artificial to create an identity, right?
yes, yes. So
So then
without
we
them,
could create an identity with two operations also. Why are we not doing that?
okay, that also you can do. Yes, that is fine. That you can do. But when you start with the same stage, then you can make use of artificials. Okay, that you can do, but that would involve again some more steps. Okay, that may not be like straightforward. So, or you may require some 2-3 steps to get the identity. Suppose you have 2 or 3 more uh, constraints with equalities, then you would require more number of steps, because you don't have to get just one column, you may have to create some 3-4 columns of identity. So in that case, then what you do? Okay, so then you will have to have a lot of steps before you reach this stage. Since you are solving only 2 or 3 constraint problems, you feel that you can easily get that. But what if you have some 10 constraints, and out of which say 5 or 6 are equality constraints, then creating those identity columns would be a big task. Okay, so then directly you can just put M and solve it. Okay, Arnav, anything else you want to ask?
Yes, and like when we have a maximization problem,
Okay,
so for equality constraint, we add the surplus variable.
okay. If you
For
have a
greater
greater,
than equal to, we add a slack and surplus.
for greater than equal to, you attach surplus. For equality, you just attach artificial. For less than equal to, you attach slack.
And for minimization, surplus for equality.
No, no, it is the same thing. You max or min doesn't make any difference. Whenever your constraints are greater than equal to types, you are going to attach surplus. Surplus means that whatever is extra on the left side, this left side is bigger than the right side. So whatever is extra goes in that variable. So that is your surplus variable. Okay, irrespective of whether it is a max problem or it is a min problem. And then whenever your left side is smaller than equal to, so if there is something which is less, the slack part goes to the slack variable. So surplus and slack is because of the by definition, or you can see the meaning of these terms, means it takes the extra thing, surplus variable, and slack takes whatever is required more. Suppose your left side is less by 4 units, okay, so you will say your slack is 4 units, so you need 4 units more to make this equality. Okay, it is less by 4 units. So suppose you have this many units of raw material available to you. Okay, some raw material you have. Now you are saying that your left side is strictly less, that means you are not making use of this entire raw material. So there are some 4 units of raw material, say your slack variable S2 is having value 4, it means 4 units of raw material are still remaining, and maybe you can do some more production to utilize this. Okay, so that is the slack which you have. So that is why the name slack and surplus, it has nothing to do with being max problem or a min problem. And equality will always have artificial, so as to get the identity column. Okay, is it fine, Arnav?
Excuse me,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
I didn't understand why did we take out dual and became both? I mean, became can be found out directly without taking out the dual, right?
No, no, dual I just wrote so that we know the solution to which problem you want to find. The question is that you have a problem like this, you solve this problem and get the solution to the dual. Okay, that will be your question. So that is why I wrote the dual. This is not required for solving the primal. I just wrote it because we are ultimately going to give solution to this problem using the solution of the primal. Okay, so you should know what is your problem which you are solving, what are your variables, which one is unrestricted, which one is non-negative. Okay, so you should know this part. Okay, usually your questions in the exam would be, first you have this problem given to you, write its dual, so this will be one part of the question, then solving the primal, find the solution to the dual, that will be the other part of the question. So when you have to solve the primal, then you have to use either big M or two phase and solve it, and then you get the solution to the dual. In case you are solving it using two phase method, then this M part would not be there, automatically it will not be there in the second phase end of the solution. So that ignoring thing, you don't have to do anything for that. Okay, just take this part and reverse the sign and you get the solution to the dual problem. Okay, so there this M part will not appear in the final table in case you are using a two phase method. So then you don't have to remove this, and okay, so you can directly take the other portion. Okay, is it fine now till here?
Yes.
Yes, so then I have another example. This I think I discussed last time, we solved this also. I don't remember if I did this with your tute as well.
I think we did.
I did it, but I'm not
Yes,
sure if
did
with
you
your
solve
tutor.
it?
Yes, okay. So if so, this is the dual. In case you just need to note down, you can again do that. So here, your third constraint is equality. So your third variable would be unrestricted in the dual. And again, if we are solving it by big M, as it is the minimization problem, so you have plus M and plus M. In case you are converting it to a max problem, then these signs will get reversed and you will have a minus M and minus M. So that is in case you convert this min to max. Okay, and then first constraint is greater than equal to type, so you will have a surplus since something is addition extra here, and so corresponding to surplus again you attach a artificial. Second is less than equal to, so you will have a slack. Third one is equality, so you will have an artificial. So presence of these variables is only dependent on the type of the constraint you have, not on the objective function type. Okay, and the correspondence again, you can see that in the first constraint is having a surplus S1, so S1 will correspond to Y1, and second constraint has only slack S2, S2 will correspond to Y2, third one has artificial, artificial will correspond to the third variable in the dual. So this is in the Cj minus Zj for these particular variables, you are going to check the values of these dual variables. Okay. So that is the final table you must be having with you also. So here if you check for the primal problem, the values are x1 is 32 by 15, x2 is 1 by 3 and x3 is 1 by 15, and if you substitute them in your objective function, you get the objective function value as minus 2. So it is the same for the big M problem as well as for the original problem also, because no artificial variables appear in the final solution table. So that means your problem is feasible, there are no artificials, and so your z value for this problem, the big M problem as well as for your original problem, they will be the same. Now for the calculation of variables of the dual, so the correspondence was, so I'll just move back. Your S1 goes to Y1, S2 with Y2 and A2 with Y3. So let us check it again. S1 with Y1. Now S1 has value 7 by 4, that is the value of Y1. So here you are not negating because already your Cj minus Zj's are all greater than equal to 0. In case you would have converted this to a max problem and then solved, you would have got negative values here. So then you had to take a sign reversal for dual variable values. Okay, then S2 corresponds to Y2, so Y2 is half. Then for Y3 you have to look up in the A1 column, A2 column, and here the after ignoring the M part you are left with 1 by 4. So you take negative of 1 by 4, that is minus 1 by 4, that is the value of your third variable. Okay, so you can again put this in the objective function of dual problem and check the value, it has to come out to be the same as this value minus 2. Okay, so you can verify it here. Again, if you have not made this sign change, you will end up in a mistake and you will not get the same optimal value for the objective function for the dual. Okay, so then you will get a hint, okay, there is some problem which you have made. Either some calculation mistakes are here so that these values are not correctly found, or you have made a mistake in the sign change. Okay, so that will help you in identifying whether your answer is correct or not. Okay, is it fine?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, so that was all regarding the relationship between primal and dual. Now, as Arnav was asking about the two methods, I'll just quickly see. If you take up the two phase method, okay, in this method, in the first phase, phase 1, suppose if it is a max problem, some z, okay, then in phase 1, and suppose you have say two artificial variables, say a1 and a2. So in phase 1 you are going to consider a min problem, say you call the objective function as w, and you are going to minimize the sum of these artificial variables. Okay. So in the first phase you are going to take up this particular objective function, and constraint set would be the same as the original problem. Okay. So are you doing it with the min one or the max in phase 1? Are you taking the min problem or max problem? What have you done in class? Nobody has an idea. Okay, so if you are doing
Max.
max, okay, so if you are doing with max, you take minus a1 minus a2. Okay, so if you are doing with min, you just take a1 plus a2. So you want to basically throw these variables out of your system, so you are going to minimize their sum. Okay, and in this phase, so only thing will change is the objective function. It will change from the original z, it will change to a1 plus a2, and you start solving it the usual manner. Okay, you have your initial basic feasible and you solve it, and if in the final tabulae of phase 1, in your final iteration, okay, you are having either no artificial is present or artificial present at 0 level, artificial equal to 0. Okay. So if at optimality or if in the final iteration, so when you are solving a min problem, you will get the final iteration when all your Cj minus Zj's are greater than equal to 0. So if this situation happens and you have no artificial in the basis, or your artificials are present in the basis but they have a value 0, then that would mean your problem is feasible and you move to phase 2. In the phase 2, you are going to go back to your original objective function. So all you change is the objective function, and your first table of phase 2 is nothing but the final table of phase 1. Okay, so you start from the final table of phase 1. The only change which you make is, in place of w, now you remove these coefficients of a1 and a2, and you have the original z with you, and you start with the final table of phase 1, and then again check the optimality. If it is not optimal, you improve, and then you stop when you get the optimality criteria. Now one thing here, I don't know if you've done questions where your artificials are present at 0 level. In case that happens, we would try to remove these artificials. This we will take as the leaving variable once we have to update it. Okay, so that we'll try to do forcibly. So right now I don't have a question. Maybe I'll take that on Monday. I'll take up a question where your artificial is present at 0 level. So we'll forcibly, in case it is not leaving on its own, we'll forcibly make this leave the basis and continue with the legitimate variables. Okay, so that we are going to do in the second phase, and end of second phase, whatever answer we get, that is the answer to your question. So in two phase, we have split this into two phases. In your big M method, what you do is you just club them up and you take your big M objective function is this z plus some m times this w. Okay, that is what happens when you are doing a big M method. So in big M, you are just clubbing both the phases together. Okay, so what is the advantage of using two phase? Or but looking at a question, you will never get to know whether to apply this or this, because you don't know what is the final thing. But in case your question is not feasible, then here itself in the end of phase 1 you will get to know that it is not feasible. So these calculations would not be required. Okay, so you may end up doing lesser number of iterations in case you are using the two-phase method when your problem is infeasible, because in that case what will happen is that your artificial will be at the basis, will remain at the basis at a non-zero level, and you would have reached optimality. All your Cj minus Zj's would be negative, but your artificial variable will be present with some non-zero value. So you know the problem is infeasible and you don't have to take up the second phase. You can stop here. But in case of big M method, you would not get to know whether it is infeasible until you've done all the iterations. Okay, so in case your problem is infeasible, two-phase method helps you in knowing that faster than big M. So in most of the cases, okay, but otherwise if your question is a feasible one, then you would require the same number of steps whichever method you use. Okay, so this is just a combination of these two phases. So you just attach this z and this particular objective function. So in case if your z is a max problem, you attach a minus sign here. Okay, so in case it is a min problem, then you will have a plus sign in case it is a max problem. So your z star would be this original z minus m times this a1 plus a2 expression. Okay, so that you remove these artificials. And in fact, if you do a question where you are using artificials and like Svetlana was suggesting that we remove, we do not take the artificials to start with. Okay, just convert the equations in such a form that you all get the identity even without attaching artificials. So if you do that, you would basically cover up the phase 1. Okay, and then if you see that you are starting with the first table of phase 2 would be your table, starting table, if you have not used artificials in the beginning. Okay, so this phase 1 method you are doing in the table format here, and if you don't want to do this, then you are just solving the equations simultaneously and removing the artificials or getting identities there. Okay, so that process is the same thing as the process you do in the first phase of this two-phase method. Okay, is this fine? You want me to explain something more?
So in case we don't add artificials तो फिर तो m का कोई point ही नहीं है, then we
No.
won't have any m in the question.
No, you won't have any m. You will straight away start with this second phase.
With this, and then we'll solve like we normally solve.
No, yes. Okay, so all these steps which you have done in phase 1 would be the steps which require you to convert it into that format where you get an identity. Okay, you have to make a coefficient 1 and then coefficient in other rows as 0. So all that process would be same as the tables which you make in phase 1. Okay, the same calculations you are going to do. You will have to perform some row operations, right, in order to create identity. So those row operations would be the same as the operations which you do in the table in phase 1. Okay, and then you will reach phase 2. So that will be your starting table. If you do not use artificials, the first table of phase 2 will be your starting table. Okay, so maybe you can take up one question and compare. Okay, have you done questions where your artificials appear in the basis but they are having value 0? Have you done such a question? No? Okay, so this maybe I'll take up on Monday. I'll get a question where this is 0 and then you will see how to remove this and reach the final answer. Okay, then what next I had thought of was solving a system of equations using simplex method.
Can we
Yes.
do that also on Monday? We have a class like.
Okay. 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 So then I'll stop here. Okay.